Today's video is actually a little bit of an uncomfortable one because it focuses on what is probably my biggest insecurity as a card maker, which is coloring with alcohol markers. Now, I like to think that I've improved quite a bit over the past couple of years when it comes to coloring in stamped images, even though it still sends me into a tiny little spiral every time I have to do it on live. But one thing that still gives me the heebie-jeebies is the idea of freehand coloring on dies. And that is exactly what we're going to do today. Buckle in. By the way, be sure to stick around until the end of this video. I do have a very special announcement that I am excited to share with you, and I also have a very small little gift for all of you watching. All right, before we get started on the making of the card, I want to do a brief overview of the primary products I'm going to be using today, like I always do. And I will warn you, it's going to look a little bit like I am a waffle flour fanboy today because I think all of these products are from Waffle Flour. So I guess guilty as charged, but I just really loved their release back in December. If you watched my YouTube video a couple of videos ago where I made the frog themed card, most of these products are from the same release, and I've just been having a lot of fun with them. So the primary product that I want to dive into today is this diving Swans Die, which it may be kind of hard to tell right now, but we have a little pond die, and these are actually two swans with their butts in the air as if they're diving into the pond, which I think is just a really fun, cute idea. And then this one may look familiar because I did use this in my frog video recently. This is just a die set that includes a bunch of lily pads, pond fronds, and flowers. I also have this wavy textured die, which is a cover plate die that just kind of does this perforated dotted line texture in a wavy pattern all across your card front. I've actually had this one for, I think, a little over a year now. It's one of my favorites that I come back to all the time. And then this was another product that was actually part of their recent December release. This is just a bunch of fun sentiments that kind of go with the die set. For instance, we have better together, life is better together, you bring me joy every day, together we find our flow. So kind of sentiments around, two people being together and enjoying each other's company. All right. Let's get started. All right, first and foremost, let's go ahead and get the bulk of our die cutting out of the way. I'm going to start out with our diving swans die here, and I'm actually going to cut all of these pieces out in white because today I'm going to be doing something that, to be honest, makes me a little nervous, especially to be filming it. But I'm going to do it anyway. I'm actually going to be coloring these guys with markers, which I don't know. I get really nervous when it comes to coloring full blank dies with markers because I'm not super confident in my marker and coloring abilities, but I'm going to try today. You know what? I'm going to try. And then for our lily pads and pond fronds, I've gone ahead and pulled out a green piece of cardstock as well as a brown piece of cardstock. This is in the color KIWI from the Hero Arts line. The brown one, I don't know why I always forget what the name of it is, but it's also from the Hero Arts line. All right, we have all of our pieces now cut out. One thing I want to show you is with this pond piece, all of these little pieces inside, which are meant to kind of look like ripples on the pond, are actually separate pieces. What I did is I actually took some mint tape, which is just some low-tack tape. Any low-tack tape or high-tack tape will work for this. But I just put some tape across the back to hold all those pieces in place because I want this to all remain one single piece. Now, alternatively, if you wanted to use colored cardstock instead of just coloring on this directly, you could cut the main pond piece out all in one color and then cut all of the ripples out in a different color. You can do this however you want. I just want to color purely with markers on a flat white piece. Now for the pond, I really wanted a bright, vibrant, kind of bluish green teal color, so I went ahead and picked out 3 blue-green markers. For those of you that don't know, I like to use the Ohuhu Honolulu B series markers, which have a brush tip on one side and a fine tip on the other. I like these a lot. I find them to be a better value and much cheaper than Copics and work nearly just as well. And the colors that I picked out were BG6 Peacock Green, BG68 Turquoise Blue, and PB9 Cloud Blue. I'll leave these markers linked down below if you are in the market. Now, I am very quick to admit that I am no expert when it comes to alcohol marker coloring, but I do think that I've improved a little bit over the years. And so let me tell you a little bit about my game plan here. What I want to do is take the darkest blue, which I believe is this BG6, the peacock green, and go all around the outside border. So the outer rim is going to be a really dark, pretty teal. And then what I'm going to do is go in with my PB9 and just do brush strokes from the outer edge going in, just to kind of bring that darker color inwards. And then I will go in with my lightest color, BG68, and I'm just going to do a full wash of color across the center, the rest of the pond pretty much, and continue to try to blend that color into the edges. Now, I do feel like this is going to be one of those things that gets uglier before it gets pretty, so bear with me. And for what it's worth, I do like to work on a scrap piece of paper just to avoid getting my markers onto my glass craft mat. If you do get it on your mat, it's fine. It comes up with a little bit of rubbing alcohol, but honestly, I prefer just not to have to worry about it. All right, there we go. So this is what we have so far. Right now, it kind of just looks like a magic kidney bean. It's not looking super perfect, obviously, but I kind of want to go for an imperfect organic look, so I think that's fine. And remember, I think it's one of those things that's going to look uglier before it gets better. At least that's what I'm telling myself. But now that I have kind of my base down, what I'm going to do next is go back in with my darkest color again, the BG6, and just kind of outline all of these little die cut pieces. So I'm just kind of following with my fine tip of my marker across these cuts. Then I'm going to do the same thing for the innermost edge on all of these ripple pieces. And then using my lightest color again, I am just going to go in and very lightly blend that dark color outward towards the other edge, the outer edge, if you will, of the ripple. Now remember, I am not an expert when it comes to alcohol markers. I kind of just follow whatever feels right to me. I'm sure there are some people watching this just absolutely cringing. And for that, I don't apologize, but you know, I hate that you're feeling that way. Okay, perfect. I think actually, no, you know what? Let's also add a couple of little dots. I'm going to go in with my darkest color again and just kind of add some little dots. I don't know why, just feels right. Okay, I think that's good. Now, let's move on to our little swans here, which I actually think I'm going to make them look a little more like ducks because I want to give them orange feet. Which, do swans have orange feet? I feel like swans have like blackish gray feet, right? I don't know, but ours are going to have orange feet because I think that'll pop more. And then I'm going to do gray on the bodies. And let's start with the feet. So I'm going to go in with three kind of yellowish orange colors. So we have Y130 mustard, Y140 nugget, and Y180 shallow orange cafe. Oh, wow. Okay, and what I'm going to do is starting with my darkest, which let me bring my scrap paper in here again. I'm going to add my darkest here at the top of the foot or leg, whatever you want to call it, the part that actually meets the body of the duck. I hope y'all can see this. I know this is like white paper on white paper, so it might be a little difficult, but hopefully you're getting the picture. And then I'm going to go in with my mid-tone and just kind of pull that down a little, just starting in the darkest part and stroking downwards so that that dark color blends in with my mid-tone here. And then finally we'll go in with the lightest color and color the bottoms of the feet. All right, ta-da! We have little duck legs, or swan legs, whatever they are. All right, now let's work on their bodies, which, like I said, I'm going to use gray because I just want, you know, kind of classic white gray swans. So I have three cool grays here. We have CG020, CG050, and CG070. And I'm going to take my darkest color here and just add some darkness, some shadow up here on the edges where their tail feathers are. And then I'll also add some here where I feel like, you know, there should be, I don't know, some crevices, whatever you want to call it, where the legs, you know, meet the body. And then let's maybe add just some here and a couple little dots there. Then what I'm going to do is go in with my lightest color. So this is the GZ020 and just kind of wash the whole thing All right, and then I'm going to go in with my mid-tone, and I don't know, I guess try to blend this out a little bit. Blend these darker pieces. Tiny bit, maybe? I don't know. Okay, I think it needs a lot more of the light color, so. Okay, I know that doesn't look perfect, but I think by the time we add the feet on, it'll look all right. Let's trust the process a little bit. Okay, and then I'm just gonna do the same kind of pattern on this guy. Okay, we've worked very hard on our little ducks here to make them look, or swans, sorry, whatever they are, to make them look somewhat decent, which I think they do. I think by the time we throw the legs on and put the whole card together, you know, they'll be looking just fine. So I'm gonna grab my tiny little glue bottle, and then let's go ahead and actually adhere their tiny little legs. All right, and there you have it, folks. Two cute little duck butts. I think they actually turned out pretty good. I mean, for someone who's not, you know, the best at coloring, I think it looks fine. And then imagine them here dipping their little heads in the pond. I think that is just adorable. Okay, let's set this to the side briefly, and then let's go ahead and quickly do some shading on our little pond elements here. And for these guys, I'm just going to do some traditional ink blending, similar to what you saw in my last frog video. I'm going to go in with a little bit of Rustic Wilderness, which is a nice deep green. And I'm going to go in with a little mini shading brush. I've been obsessed with these shading brushes recently from Waffle Flower. I'll be totally honest, they sent me these maybe over a year ago, and I kind of thought they were silly, like an unnecessary expense. But I've been proven wrong. I actually really love these things. They're so soft. I don't know if, I mean, obviously you can't really tell how soft they are on camera, but they're so soft and compact. Like these bristles are in here super dense. If you pick up just a little bit of ink, boom. I mean, they're great. I love them, and awesome for getting into these little tiny dies. Okay, now if you thought those last brushes were small, wait until you see these. So these are the Shader 2 Plus 1/4 inch flat tip brushes, which I actually just used these for the first time the other day. But if you look at these guys, these are super small mini brushes. For comparison, here is the 1 Plus brush that I was just using. And these are actually designed with a flat tip. And the reason I'm pulling this guy out is because I thought it would be helpful to grab some green here. And then on these pond fronds, kind of doing a little downstroke, if you will, where the fronds meet. So you kind of have that shading separating the fronds. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if that really translates well over camera, and also I'm probably not the best at it, but do you see how it's really easy to add that subtle shading kind of between the fronds where they're separating? Super great tip using those flat brushes. Now lastly, let's go ahead and shade the little brown parts of the cattails, and I'm just going to go in with a little bit of ground espresso. Just give a subtle little shade there to the bottom. Now I should mention these brushes, these round ones I'm using specifically, Waffle Flower actually recently released these in a rainbow pack, so it comes with, don't quote me, but like 8, 10, 12, I don't know, I'll leave the link down below, of these brushes that are all color coded. So you have like a red brush, a purple brush, a blue brush, a green brush, etc. But they're double-sided. So not only do you have a brush on this side, you also have one on this side. So for instance, if this was my green brush, I could have a side that I use for all of my lighter green inks, and then a side that I use for all of my darker green inks. So I thought that was super nifty. I'll leave that linked down below. I don't think I have it here to show you, but if you're in the market for brushes, again, maybe check that out. Let's glue these puppies on and move on with our card. Okay, perfect. Now let me just quickly clean up our work surface here. Now we have our pond and our other little pond elements here. All that we're really missing now is, of course, we need a sentiment and we need to make a background. And I'm thinking we're going to go super simple with the background. Remember I showed you this wavy texture die earlier at the beginning of the video? This is what I want to use for our background. So I'm just going to take a white piece of cardstock. This is cut down to a regular A2 size panel, so 4¼ inches by 5½ inches. And then I'm just going to center this right on the card panel. I'm also going to add just a tiny bit of tape just to make sure that it stays in place as I run it through the machine. And then let's go ahead and run it. All right, and there we have it, a very pretty yet subtle background. I love how these waves kind of, play with the pond because obviously there's waves in the water. I think it's just a really nice design element. Now, I do want to add a little bit of extra interest to this so it's not so plain, and this is how we're going to do it. So we're going to do some splattering, which is something that I very rarely do unless I am creating like stars in a night sky on a card. And for the longest time, I've only owned white acrylic ink, but I recently bought this black acrylic ink specifically so that I could do splattered backgrounds like we're about to do. So what I'm going to do is super simple. I'm just going to grab a little bit of the ink, if I can open it, and I'm going to be very careful not to do this over my background quite yet. And I'm just going to add a little bit of this to an acrylic block. You could also put it directly on your glass craft mat if you wanted to. I just thought maybe this would be easier to clean since I'm filming. And then what I'm going to do is pick up a little bit of this using a fan brush. I'm not doing it just yet because I need to take some precautionary measures here. So I'm going to pick a little bit of this up with a fan brush and then just flick it onto my background. Now, because I don't want black ink splattered all over my work surface and computer, I am actually going to take this cardboard box here. I'm going to place my cardstock here in the box, pick up some of the ink here, try not to get too much, and then I'm going to try to do a light splatter. All right, I'll be honest, the splatter is a little more intense than I was kind of going for, but you know what? I think it's fine. I think it'll still get the job done, so we're gonna rock with it. Now finally, we need to make a sentiment. And for the sentiment, I want to heat emboss on colored cardstock. So I'm using this color of cardstock called Adriatic. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I believe it's the name of a sea somewhere, but it's this really pretty dark teal color that I think pairs really nicely with our pond that we've created. And again, this cardstock, like most of my cardstock, is from Hero Arts. And I already know I want to use this really pretty Better Together sentiment, which I think is maybe the largest sentiment in this pack. Before we get to stamping, I'll go ahead and add some anti-static powder to my paper here. I think that I am just about in need of a refill of this thing because it feels like there's barely any coming out, but I think I have some refills in my drawer. I don't know. Hopefully that's enough. We will see. All right, now while the ink is still wet, I'm going to go ahead and dump some white embossing powder on top. This is ultra white. No, it's not. This is white detail from Hero Arts. I was thinking of ultra fine. So let's go ahead and dump that on. I'll give the paper a little bit of tippy taps. Beautiful. It looked like our anti-static powder did get the job done. There's a tiny little gap there on the top of the T. I don't know if you see that. I'm going to try to put a little more powder on top to see if we can cover that. Not really, but you know what? That's fine. Let's go ahead and heat this guy with the heat gun. All right, that looks great to me. Now let's just give it a quick little rub down with a barely damp paper towel to get off any remaining anti-static powder that might be on there. And then we're going to cut it out. Now, obviously, I love the font of this sentiment stamp, but what I love even more is actually the coordinating die, because if you notice, this die gets super tight and in there on the stamp. Which personally, I love that style. It makes the sentiment end up looking a little bit more delicate and, I don't know, almost luxurious. I don't know if that makes sense, but to me, that's what it feels like. But that does mean it's a very tight fit, so you need to be a little extra careful when it comes to lining up the die, because if you're off a tiny bit, there's not a ton of room for error. It's one of those design things where it looks better, but it might be a little trickier to actually get it done. You know what I mean? And because I want to be so careful, I'm actually going to add 3 pieces of tape here. All right, let's cut it. All right, moment of truth. And again, it's a little delicate, so be careful when you're going to punch it out. Okay. Oh no, that was not super straight, was it? See, I said all of that about how you got to be careful, and then I didn't even line it up that straight. You see how the B is like touching the edge? But you can imagine in a world where I did center it right, it would be just gorgeous. And honestly, this doesn't really bother me that much, so I'm probably just going to go ahead and use it as is. You could always, you know, restamp and recut if you wanted this to be just perfect. In my opinion, though, in a craft where things can be so exact, this is one of those things that, you know, reminds the recipient that, hey, this was handmade. All right, now we have all of our elements done. All that's left to do is actually put this card together. What I want to do first is go ahead and adhere our little ducks to the pond since we haven't done that yet. And I'm just going to use a tiny bit of foam tape to give them a little bit of pop and dimension. Now, placing these is definitely more art than science. But generally, you kind of want to place it in the center of these two ripples. So I'm going to place this guy something like that. And then for our other guy, by the way, what should we name these guys? Leave some names down in the comments. This one, let's tilt to the side a little bit. Maybe something like that. Perfect. And then what I want to do is I think I want to have this kind of down in the bottom right hand corner. Or maybe bottom left. I'm not sure. I imagine having it down in the bottom right and then having our little pond frond sticking out with our little lily pads down here and then having the better together kind of going across the top. But now that I'm thinking about it, I wonder if it would work as a horizontal card. I mean, I'm sure it would, right? Okay, whatever. I'm gonna stick to my original plan. I'm gonna put the pond down in the bottom right in portrait mode, if you will. Okay, so let's go ahead and add some mint tape. Or not mint tape, sorry. I'm looking at this mint tape. This is foam tape. And you want to make sure if you do have mint tape down here that you're adhering the foam tape also to areas where there's not mint tape. Because remember, mint tape is low tack, which means it can peel off. But if you have that foam tape stretched out across it, you know, and it's adhering to those spots where there's not mint tape, you should be fine. Now, if you wanted to, you could remove the mint tape and put the foam tape directly over the little pieces to hold them in place, but I am not that serious about it. It's fine. Okay, let's place this guy. All right, I think something like that is perfect. And then for our little lily pads, what I want to do is I want to glue these together so they're kind of a package deal, if you will. And then we're going to add a tiny bit of foam tape to these guys as well, so that they're on the same plane as the pond, you know? All right. That'll go something like so. And then for our little cattail here, I'm just going to use regular old liquid glue. We're not going to pop it up because it's more going to be in the background, right? And we'll slip him back here like so. And then last but not least, we will add our sentiment. All right, you can see all these tiny little strips of foam tape I added. Hopefully that's enough. I think it will be. And I want my G and my T to kind of overlap the pond just a tiny bit to just connect the elements and bring the whole card together. Maybe a little more tilted. Yeah, something like that. Well, no, maybe I want more. Oh, okay, nope, we're gonna do that. We're committing to that placement because otherwise I think I might rip the sentiment. And then, of course, all that's left to do is to go ahead and adhere this guy to a card base. And remember, this is just an A2 size card, so this is 4¼ by 5½ inches, which doubled would be 8½ by 5½ inches. And then, as always, we like to use our little Scor-Pal trick. Line up your card front with that right angle of your Scor-Pal, and you'll get a perfect placement every time. And the actual last step, as always, we have to stamp it. So everyone knows who made it. You know what I mean? You know what I mean. But that is it, y'all. That is the card. I think it turned out pretty cute, if I do say so myself, for a card featuring literal butts. Now, a couple of takeaways. I would probably not splatter so hard on the background. I was looking for more of a subtle splatter, but I do think it kind of drives home that pond theme. It makes it feel a little more dirty, you know what I mean? In a good way, not a bad way. So I think ultimately it's fine, but probably would have gone easier on the splatter. Obviously, the sentiment, not super centered, also fine. And the coloring on the pond, I think turned out pretty good considering my skill level. Now, an expert colorer could obviously do better, but I'm not an expert colorer, so I am pretty satisfied with this. What do you think? Now back over to my face cam because I do have an important announcement for you. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, I do have a very special announcement that I'm excited to share with you all. If you're not familiar with the company Barely Art, they are an incredible small crafting company that specializes in glue. They're actually the ones that make this glue that you see me use all the time in my tiny little glue bottle. Well, in addition to their crafting business, they also run an incredible nonprofit organization called Cards for Cubs, who aims to support and encourage children living in the foster care system. Each year they run a card drive where they collect tens of thousands of handmade greeting cards from across the country and then ship those out to foster care agencies and other nonprofit organizations that support foster care children. The goal is to place a handmade card in the hands of every foster child in the country to help them remember just how special they are. This year, Cards for Cubs set an ambitious goal to collect over 100,000 cards, which is absolutely mind-blowing to me. But as you might imagine, the shipping costs to actually ship out all of those cards really adds up. And this year, in order to help alleviate some of that burden of shipping costs, they are actually running a raffle fundraiser that I am honored to be a part of. With a donation of $10 to Cards for Cubs, you can be entered for a chance to win a handmade greeting card by yours truly, and also directly support those efforts in getting the handmade cards into the hands of foster children. I'll leave a link in the description of this video where you can enter the raffle for a chance to win a handmade greeting card, and I'll also add some information down there as well about how you can actually make cards and send them in to be sent to kids as well. Thank you so much to any and all support you may be able to offer, even if it's just sharing and spreading the news. It really means a lot, not just to me, but to so many people. Now, I did mention at the beginning of this video, I had a tiny little gift for all of you who made it to the end of the video. As you saw, I used a ton of products from Waffle Flower's December Better Together release. And as I was editing this video, I actually spoke with Nina, who owns and runs Waffle Flower, and she agreed to give all of you a limited time discount code. So if you click the link down in the description and use code RALPH at checkout, you will get 10% off of any of the items that are part of that December Better Together release, including the blending brushes that I talked about. So go knock yourselves out, and thank you, Waffle Flower. All right, and with that, I think it is finally time for this video to come to a close. Thank you guys so much for being here. As always, I really appreciate it. Go ahead and give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye, y'all.